In this episode with Connor Johnston.
I've got OCD as well. When I was younger, it was like a pretty big thing in my life, and I found like when I was playing basketball, that was the one time that it wouldn't really take over my life or affect me in a negative way. It would just go. And I think that's what I've been trying to do, is get to this state with acting. And sometimes when you really are in that flow, like just like you said then, in that flow, in that scene, that's really beautiful. And I think that's probably a huge thing that people, that you've discussed on this show and everything, that are passionate about things, they get into that state, and that's when the magic happens. Well, look, the thing that I was interested in was I loved the whole like showmanship, and I love, Mum would take me to the theatre, and we'd go and see shows, and we went and seen the Aquinas College high school show, and a guy that was in my rugby team played Peter Pan in it, and he did an amazing job, and I thought it was just the coolest thing ever. And I always had this back and forth relationship where I would have loved to have done the drama and the acting, but like as I mentioned before about my schedule of the trainings, it just simply wasn't possible, and even in the drama school, like the period that was in the day, it was at the same time as this thing at Tauranga Boys is called Titans, and there's basically like the best player from each sporting code in the school was in it, and that was in the same period as drama, and I had to be in that representing basketball, of course, and it was only in the last year that they put me in there, and I said to them, my English, because I loved English, I loved movies, I loved TV shows, like my room was just covered in movie posters, and I was obsessed like with the idea of acting in movies and stuff, but I just had never had the space to be able to make that first step, and it wasn't until I got in front of the camera, when I was at uni and I met those fellas, Dwight and Cody, and I was just like, wow, this is different, this is cool. And it just doesn't, and because I had a warped perception of how things were going to go. Because I was like, oh, great, I'm never going to have to get a day job again. I'll just be going from set to set for the rest of my life, and I'll be in LA in 6 months, and that's just how you learn as well. Because, I was still only young, and I'm still learning all these things myself. And this one was a boxer, and we had the women's Olympic boxing coach was our on-set advisor. So like in pre-production, for a couple of months, I was traveling up to Auckland each week, and I was working with him, working with Cam on all the technical side of things, and because when I was in my audition, I told them about how great of a boxer I was, of course, but that was more just a weekly fitness class where you're just skipping rope in a boxing ring or hitting a bag. It was very different.
Connor, thank you for taking time out to come on our podcast and tell us about your life's work story. I appreciate that.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. My first question is about the title of our show, Life's Work. What would you describe as your life's work?
I knew that this question was coming, and I'm trying to not get too wishy-washy with it. I think that a huge thing for me personally, Steve, is when I think about my life's work, I don't think too specifically about acting or about the other bits and pieces that I do for money, but I more think about the effect that I have on people's lives. And I think one of the most important things for me is to know that when people have an interaction with me in my life, that they leave with a smile on their face or a positive feeling, like the opposite to when you say you sort of left that interaction with a bit of a sour taste in your mouth. I like to think of it as the opposite to that, more warm and bubbly. But yeah, I'd say in the last couple of years I've been also more directed to and a bit more a little bit more concise and stuff. And I think we can elaborate more as we talk about that. But I guess coming into this acting side of things, I have had younger people and stuff come and talk to me and want to know how to get started and whatnot. And I guess so that's also been a thing that I've been doing is trying to help people take that next step in their careers as well, rather than just being genuinely kind or whatever, So I think there's a lot of ways that you can, help people and show kindness, and that might be, we can show through in a lot of different ways. So I guess that's what my life's work is, and for me that sort of started with doing work in the community. I've always had a soft spot for the disabled community. I've done a lot of work in the disabled community over the last few years, like at the RDA, Tauranga and Taupo, the horse riding for disabled, and also just mentorship programs that I've done and bits and bobs for people with mixed neurodiversities and physical abilities. And I was actually lucky when I got the opportunity. I got a scholarship to go to Waikato Uni. And when I was over there, and this was a Serdman Hillary Scholarship, so that's for sports, academics, and leadership / community service, So we'll touch on that later in terms of my sporting and things, but with the community stuff was really great, because when I went there, I was able to run a program with my friend of mine, my Otto Barton, and we were doing getting kids with mixed abilities physically active, so 2 nights a week. It was like after school hours, and it was at our campus basketball gym, which is my local hangout. I didn't really leave there very much when I was at uni. There's like a poster up on there of our team and everything. And every week we'd do something a bit different. We'd do dancing, touch rugby, basketball. And I think a lot of people, unfortunately, in that situation, they don't get the same chances that other people do. And I think, in terms of not starting off on a level playing field, it can really lead into some negative cycles. And that's just something that I've been aware of. And I hate people feeling excluded from things. And I really, I'm quite sensitive and aware of that. And, I think, if it goes from, say not being picked in a PE class for a school team or whatever it is, and all of a sudden, if you're not feeling welcome, not only does that affect you mentally, but also you're not going to then be being physically active, and then, then you might not be getting as much vitamin D, and and then it can just lead to, you could be doing a lot more computer games, a lot more inside things or solo stuff, and not, having that same, some of those beautiful qualities that you do get when you have the chance to be physically active, especially in a team environment, like we were touching on before we started recording today. There's a lot of great attributes that can help you in life when you have that ability or that privilege to be a part of something like a team or a group or whatever. And so that has been a huge thing for me. And when I was at Waikato Uni, I really enjoyed doing that work, and I met a lot of cool people. That I got to say this. I didn't plan at all what I was going to say, but that's the first thing that comes to mind, and I'm happy with that.
That was a good answer. It was a good answer. Full answer. I liked it. It was good. So, I mean, essentially what you're saying is that no matter what you do, you want to be a positive influence.
Exactly.
And be a bit of a coach and mentor for people.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if, there's been times in my life where I've felt excluded from things, and I've felt like I didn't know what I should do and what the next step would be. And then after going through that and learning what the next step is, for me in certain situations, I feel like the least I can do is help pass that on to someone in a similar situation to me. And it's just so happened that in these last couple of years, that's been become tangible in this sort of whole acting thing, and people going, oh, great. So where do I start? How do I get a TV role, or how do I get an agent, or or training or whatever? And that's something that I had no idea what to do, and I was lucky that I had people that helped me. And then, and I think it's a lovely, it makes me feel great if I'm able to help someone else get into that, get the ball rolling on something that they want to do and that might, excite them or might be passionate about, or learn a new passion or meet some new friends or meet a new community, So, and that's definitely, that's definitely what it's all about.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you touched on there something about, you said there that, you've had occasions when you've been excluded. One of the questions that sprung to mind when you were talking about, working with riding with the disabled, for instance, and, neurodiverse people and being inclusive. I agree with you. I think it's really important that people feel inclusive. In a lot of workplaces, in my day job, we look at that. How much people belong makes a big difference to how they feel about work and about their colleagues and their leaders and the bosses and managers and what have you. So is there an example there where maybe and the question really is about what's triggered that for you? Why are you involved in those groups? What's taken you in that direction? Was it just chance, or was there something that's maybe, elsewhere in your life that's led you to working in those spaces? Is that a exclusive moment for yourself, or what was it that's taken you in that direction?
Well, I have to say, I think when I was younger, I definitely lacked a lot of confidence, and I had a couple of things that I was actually bullied quite a lot about, and I had when I was my childhood, it wasn't definitely sort of moved around schools a couple of times, due to that, and I guess without getting too far into it, I guess I could say that I definitely know what it felt like to feel ostracized and excluded, and it really was like a horrible feeling. And I was lucky that I had people like my mum and my old man and whatnot in my life that were always there for me, and my babysitter at the time and a teacher aide at the time as well. And that was a long time ago now. And I've come into my adulthood, but that feeling has never left me.
I was going to say, I mean, it's not something that goes away, is it? Something you're talking about it now, so you've still got the memories of that. So quite impactful.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right. I do definitely have all of those memories still, present with me, and that's something that it doesn't really go away. And the thing is I wouldn't go back and change any of that though, because I feel like I might have not been able to make a positive difference that I have on people's lives, and and I think what sort of happened was as I got a bit older and I got bigger and stronger and more confident and stuff, and I learned to stand up for myself and other people and everything, and that was something that I just took pride and joy in doing, is standing up for people. And if I thought someone was being picked on or excluded or whatever, that's definitely not something that would be rolling around with me, and then went to.
Sorry, I was just going to say though, I think this features quite a lot, I think, in people's stories, that sometimes the negative stuff turns into a real positive.
Yeah, exactly.
Doesn't it? It makes you kind of see things from a different perspective that maybe the bullies don't see. Yeah. But you see life from a different perspective, and that shapes who you become as an adult and how you behave with other people.
Very much so, yeah, Steve, absolutely, and if I'd grown up just, never always having, been in the centre of attention and always having all the friends and always being the cool guy and stuff, or, I definitely would just be a completely different person today. And and I wouldn't change that for the world. Although at the time I absolutely would have. I wish I could have just fast forwarded time or time traveled forward or whatever. Or just disappeared off the face of the earth or whatever. But I'm really grateful for the opportunities that I've had and the support crew I've had around me, and that I was able to turn that around a little bit and again use that, like you said. And I would be a different person today if I hadn't had that stuff going on in my life, and I just don't even know where I would be right now and what I'd be doing, and I just so and I don't really go into all that kind of stuff very much at all, and not many people know that sort of background. I think people probably take one look at me or whatever, or see me on Instagram or whatever, and probably assume very different upbringing for me, but it's just definitely it's not the case, it's only really so but I agree.
Everyone's got a story though, right? Everyone's got, and
absolutely,
that's on the inside. We judge books by their covers, but we don't necessarily know the details on the inside.
Oh, absolutely, no, that's very true.
So what was your was your childhood like then? Where did you grow up? What was your family like? How were you as a character? You've alluded to some of that a little bit earlier on, but what were you like as a character?
Honestly, I I think I don't want to just say sports to like describe what I was as a child, as a character or as a child, but that was a very prevalent thing in my life. I was doing like every sport that I could get my hand on, you know. So like mum and dad were running me across the countryside, you know, for rugby and basketball, and my little brother always having to tag along, you know, down to nationals in Christchurch and Hawke's Bay, you know, and that was his weekends taken up. So I do feel for him in terms of that. But yeah, I think that the sports was huge, because I guess you could say that from there, that, you know, that definitely stemmed into me meeting a lot of nice friends. And also the great thing is, you know, is especially when you're playing on this sort of slightly higher level, on the rep level, the national level, international level, you know, you end up meeting people from all around as well. And, you know, New Zealand being such a small country, you know, like I could just, you know, jump on a flight to Wellington or Christchurch or whatever, and I'm going to know people there just that I played basketball with, you know, and you catch up with them at regionals every few months or whatever. And I think that was cool. And, you know, I think, yeah, that's the main thing that I can remember from my childhood.
So sport.
Yeah.
Where did that come from? Are you from a sporting family or?
Yeah. My dad's really sporty, you know. He was really into his rugby, you know. He was playing for Bay of Plenty and things, and he was on the, you know, All Blacks development squad and training squad and everything, and he's a bodybuilder as well. Right. So, you know, a lot of gymming and stuff. And then he had me. And he started his own business, and then you know, focused on that, and I guess that's definitely where some of the sporting side of things came from. And so it's been like, it's come around in a big 360, because just as of this year, I've been helping him out a lot at the family business, which has been awesome, you know.
Yeah. Cool. That's pretty cool though, when you get to work with your family.
It is, yeah.
Well, great. It could be. I mean, I suppose there's pros and cons. Maybe I'm not so sure.
There's always, you know, the odd little ups and downs, but I think I'm pretty lucky. I think it's great. You know, it's definitely something that we've bonded over as well. You know, and it's been really incredible. It's been really incredible, actually. Yeah, so that's good.
Oh, that's good. That's cool. So is that, you know, when you were a younger fella, then what was your sort of hopes and aspirations about what you wanted to do when you grew up? And when I say that, I'm still working it out for myself. But, you know, was sports going to be a feature for you, you know, when you were a younger fellow? Is that what you thought?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I definitely always thought I was going to be a professional rugby or a professional basketball player, you know, even up into my adulthood as well, you know. And when I was at high school here in Tauranga, in my last year, I was captain of the Tauranga boys team, you know, and we went to a Super 8 competition. It's the eight boys schools in New Zealand, Westlake and everything, and I ended up doing pretty well. And in the finals, ended up getting like my personal best, which was like 55 points or something, and a couple of dunks, you know. And the coach of the Manawatu Jets was on the stage. So that's the National Basketball League. So you got the NBL, which the Breakers play in, which is the Australian one. Yeah. You know, Wollongong Hawks, Sydney Kings, and then you got the New Zealand one. So so they basically sort of said, you know, if I wanted to go to Palmy and they'll pay for me to do my degree and, you know, come do that. And I was like, wow, I was so rapt, you know. And then fortunately I ended up having another opportunity, which was a little bit closer to home, you know, over in the Tron. And again, a really great opportunity, you know, covering all the costs of university. And plus, you know, with the Serban Hillary one, there was leadership, mentoring programs and public speaking things, and, you know, gym memberships and trainers and dietitians and all sorts of stuff, you know, it's training the future leaders and whatnot. So, you know, I was just like, yeah, great. That's the next step. And I'll play. The idea was to play for the Waikato Pistons, and then in that season they didn't have a team, you know, and there was no team in the NBL, and so I was just playing, you know, as the captain of the Waikato men's team and also the Waikato uni team, and then and then I've sort of transitioned into the acting side of things. But yeah, I guess in answer to your question, I wanted to be like a writer, like a creative writer, a chef, a really creative chef, or a professional sportsman. Right. And I hadn't done a whole lot of acting, but I knew I would love to be in films, but it didn't seem like a realistic, you know, thing for me. Whereas professional sports, obviously it was a realistic thing for me to transition into because I was pretty well there,
Sure.
Yeah.
So before I ask you the question about that and where the sport, sort of sport went and the decisions around that, you mentioned there about being a bit closer to home. Was that important for you?
Oh yeah, I think everyone's got their own relationship with if they want to be close or far from the nest. It just reminds me of one of my flatmates, and she's only 20 and she's from Australia originally, so she's living in a different country at the age of 20, just renting, working a job away from the mum, away from the family, and I just couldn't really, fathom that myself, or not at this point in time. And, if I got a great role over in, Cali or Sydney or something and go and do that for a couple of months and come back or whatever, that's one thing. But just to, do that, I really, I liked being in Hamilton with the rents back here in Tauranga. I could shoot home on the weekends and, have the odd steak or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is important for me.
Bring your washing home.
Yeah, exactly. Bring the washing home. I still do a little bit from my house over the bridge to the rent's house, but yeah, I think that's huge for me. I like to. It definitely helps me feel grounded. I'm just really lucky. If I ever feel really bad or really crap about something, I know I can just make that call or just jump in that car and mum and the old man and whatnot would definitely be able to help me out for that one.
Yeah.
So I'm lucky. I feel bad saying that because I know a lot of people don't have that opportunity, but I've got to be grateful for what I got, and that's something that's always been consistent for me, and I'm super grateful for that. So
quite a tight family then, right?
Yeah. Quite a tight family, yeah. And just as we've gotten older, we've all just gotten closer. And I guess I was maybe, probably a little bit of a privileged brat at some times, and I didn't, might not have fully appreciated everything that was been doing for me when I was younger. And now I come back and, you just appreciate all the little things. And you also think about, everything that the rents did for me, like driving up and down the countryside, taking me to my basketball games. And, that's a big part of your life if you're dedicating a lot of your weekends to that, They gave me every opportunity I could to do that. So, so it is a big thing for me for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's go back to sport then.
Sure.
Basketball. What your aspirations there, and you were clearly on a pathway there. What was, if I can ask you, I'm always fascinated by what drives people and how they apply themselves to get to where they want to be. So for you, was that just like was it a conscious thing that you were working towards, or was it just kind of happening?
Well, I think it was a little bit of both. I think I knew basketball like the back of my own hand, and rugby as well. I was in the first team for rugby and basketball, and then I had to pick one.
Right.
Because we were going to exchanges, so we'd go to Westlake, and the first teams would go, and I was a captain of the basketball team, and then one minute I'd be playing rugby, and we couldn't have that. Coaches weren't too happy. So focus on basketball, and I think obviously, sort of a subconscious thing, but also like I was lucky enough that in the pathways I was in, I was made aware of the of the career opportunities and how to get into those. So I was always planning and thinking, and in terms of like what made me tick, like I really, for basketball, I really did have that drive, like I'd be out each night just shooting hoops constantly, try to get 1,000 shots up each night, right into the dark, and even when I did tennis, like I'd take a big bucket of balls down and just work on my serve all morning just by myself against the thing, and I was just so dedicated because I really wanted to, be a professional sports person, and that was just like that was just my life, and then I think in a similar kind of sense that transitioned into acting, which we can get into how that happened, but that's a similar feeling that I get that and with basketball I always see my mates playing on the TV all the time now and stuff, and I always think that'd be great, maybe I should but it does take a lot of hard work and dedication and commitment to maintain that kind of lifestyle of being a professional sports person. And I feel like you really gotta, that's what you want to do if you want to be committing to that. And I decided that at this point in time that's not my biggest priority right now.
Yeah. So what did you learn from sport, from what you've just been saying there, being dedicated and committed to something?
Yeah.
I think it not only benefits you in the activity you're in, the sport you're in, or whatever it is, but that's kind of teaching you about life, isn't it? About how to apply yourself.
Yeah,
So
100%.
what lessons did you learn from those basketball days?
Yeah, so from the basketball days, like first of all, time management for me, because like you still got other commitments in life, and whether it's at high school and you got an assignment you got to do, or uni and you got an assignment you got to do, or you need to actually work a job to survive, so you need to get good with your time management. That's something that I learned through sports as well, making sure I get into trainings on time and making a good impression on the coach. And if you're the captain, you can't be just rolling up late all the time at all. So yeah, time management and discipline, getting up early. And when we were at high school, we had a pretty full on training regiment as well. We every morning, Monday to Friday, we do fitness training, and every lunchtime shooting training, and every day after school at least one training or game, and sometimes it'd be two. Because we'd play in the men's league and the school league, because the school league was. But yeah, no. So honestly, I think definitely like discipline, time management, and then just your camaraderie as well. So if you're working in like a team sport, and I'm sure that, say, if you're doing golf, you've got a whole team of people around you as well, your coaching staff and management and everything. But, like in my experience with the team sports, it's been awesome, and learning how to work with other people, and to compromise and to negotiate. And I learned, not always just go and, trying to get the ball and make a beeline for the hoop, but to use your teammates, and help each other out. So I think that definitely applies to things outside of sports as well. And that's what can make people more efficient, is when you don't try to do everything yourself, but maybe you do the task that you're really good at, and then you work with, or you employ someone else to do something that they have a competitive advantage in, and then you can come together and make a overall product or team or business that's really optimal.
Yeah, that's the nature of a team, isn't it? Bringing all the different parts together to work together, like, I suppose, like cogs in a Swiss watch or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like the different positions, like, you got your point guards, your 3-point specialists, your big men underneath, you know what I mean? So that's like that. And then it just applies to, even like going further out, like when I was at uni, I was studying finance and economics, and like I did a lot of stuff to do with international trade, and we were talking about different countries that have, say, various natural resources, so they specialize in in a certain industry, and they can make as much produce as much output of that as they can. And then another country that's really good at something else, and then talking about trading, as opposed to trying to do everything yourself at a not an efficient thing. And I just found that interesting, and I remember, when we were talking about the States and how they're saying, like it wasn't efficient for them to be making their own, guns and weapons and things. But even though that may be the case, they were, not wanting to rely on another country to be making that for them, just in case, things went belly up. So, making something at a loss. But I'm going on a tangent here, but I do find all that stuff really interesting,
Yeah, well, it's about how we behave together, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's how we work, how we function.
Yeah,
whether
exactly.
Whether that's on an international stage, like you're describing there, or whether it's actually at a micro level as part of a family.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah, you had a thought there.
Yeah. No, I think it's just it's like you were saying earlier. I think the people that you work with can make a huge difference on your happiness and your motivation levels in the workplace or in your living environment. And I think that's just something that you got to be aware of as well. Is if that's not the energy that is helping you, just being aware of what energy you're letting in. And I think it comes back to just knowing that you can't control everything, just you can only control the things that are within your bubble. And if something else isn't serving you, then you just need to, be aware of that and how you're going to navigate that. And I know, like, from my personal experience, that when I am in the workplace and people are, positive and want to be there, and it really makes a huge difference for me and my mindset. And sometimes when that's not the case, which will happen because that's not out of our control, and people could be going through all sorts of things that we don't know about, but just like I said, just being aware of that and then not letting that have a negative impact on your energy and how you're doing and your outlook on life and your motivation levels for that day. But I do have a couple of things that I think that can really help kind of push you through those times as well, for sure. So I think one thing that I heard about, or someone might have told me, I don't know how it came into my life, but it's a really good one. And it's talking about how, your say your happiness levels, just to keep it broad, those can go up and down, all the time. Obviously, we can't expect to always be feeling super positive and, at the top of our game all the time. And I think that the difference that, you want to be aware of is that if you are having one of those days where you're feeling a bit down or a little bit lower, in terms of some of those levels, it's like how you respond to that, and you don't need for that to be instantly positive. It's not a bad thing to feel all the feels, And again, it's like when things happen in your life, you talk about emotion, and I remember my acting coach said to this, but emotion is like energy in motion. It's going to move, and I think it's great to get out, go for a walk, be physically active, and move around. But the point that I was getting to was, it's like when you see a full moon, and it's beautiful and radiant and glowing and so luscious, and then when you see like a small, like say like a 1/5 of a moon or whatever the terminology is for that, you don't look at it and go, oh, like it's only a little wee moon, it's only a little, it's a bit dull tonight, isn't it? It's still magnificent. You look up and you go, wow, it's incredible. It looks like the DreamWorks thing. Or you just go, yeah, that's lovely. And full well in your mind that in 3 weeks' time, that is going to be a full moon. Like, it's the cycle. There's no other thing around that. And just a week ago, it was a full moon, and I think that's something to be aware of is, things go in cycles. And it's like, if you just know that if you are having a day like that, you don't want to be crapping on yourself about it, because that you still got to appreciate the feeling that you are having right now for being beautiful and radiant, because it is in its own sense. And that in a couple of days or in a couple of weeks or a couple of months, that you will be back at that full moon, and I think one thing to help you get through that is this sort of pull in on the feeling of when you did last feel like quite full, full in a sense, and just remind yourself of what that felt like. And it's like the whole fake it till you make it thing. But if you are having one of those days, just know that you are going to be having that full feeling so soon. And if you really just hold on to that and imagine that, then it can kind of take over you and you can kind of become that. And if not, that it's just around the corner. And if you got to push it up for another couple of days or another week or two, you get back to that full moon cycle, and just know that that's how things happen. I think when you get in your head, thinking that this is going to be you, forever now, that it can definitely make things feel a lot worse at the time.
There's a lot in that you've just been saying there. I think, some of the things that spring to mind while you're talking there, Connor, is that nothing is constant. Nothing remains constant. Things change. Things pass.
Yes.
And like you say, everything's kind of cyclical, right? So if you're having a shit day, it's not going to be, like that permanently. Things will change. But a lot of it as well is down to your perspective and how you see things.
Yes,
like
exactly.
you said, you might see, a sliver of moon, but actually the moon's still there. And so are you looking at the moon just in a different phase, or is it, have you got the perspective that you're looking at something different? It's not, it's the same. It's like, actually something sprung to mind when you were talking there about someone once said to me that even on the cloudiest of days, the sun's still there. You just can't see it, but you got to know that it's still there.
Yeah.
So these kind of things are important, either when you've got your ups and downs and when you're having a bad day. And like, for instance, I think this is relevant to what you're talking about with, bullying. There's a lot of bullying goes on in schools and in teams and groups, in workplaces. It's good to understand that actually it's about perspective. It's about how you see things and knowing that things don't last, and actually you don't have to view it that way.
Exactly, yeah. Especially, if you are at high school and you're listening to this, or, or in a job, or it's, whatever it is. Like, I think especially high school is the one where it can feel like this stuff that you're dealing with these, you know, external factors, these other people and stuff, you feel like that's going to be something that you're going to be putting up with for the rest of your life. And you know, and everyone goes off and does their different things after high school, but it's just very much not the case, you know. And once you get out of that little bubble, you just realize that there's so many like crazy and beautiful and different people out there just fully expressing themselves and living their life. And that, you know, no one, people just start to mind their own business a bit more as well. You know, no one's up in your grill talking about what kind of shoes you're wearing or whatever, you know. And yeah, and in terms of things constantly changing, I feel like one thing that I've been thinking about a lot lately is that when you have someone that, you know, that means a lot to you, and that, you know, that's there for you and has your back and whatnot, I think it's important to really hold on to that and nurture those relationships. And I found that like Tauranga, for example, it's like a bit of an arrival departure lounge. Everyone's always coming and going and coming in and out of my life. And, you know, and I'm sure that, you know, people can sort of understand where I'm coming from and that. And, you know, I've had a lot of people that have been, you know, very, very close to me, and then next minute they're off on a flight to the other side of the world, you know. And I think that's just something to really nurture when those people are there in your life, to be present with them and to, you know, show your appreciation and if, you know, if you're thinking about something, like tell them how much you love them, you know, and tell them what you're thinking about them, because the thing is they just don't know necessarily otherwise, you know, and they just don't know you're thinking that. And you know, I feel like, especially if it is like something positive that you got to say, you know, people really love it when you say that, and you know, people always second guess themselves and think, oh, I do really love that outfit, but I just don't want to be weird and go up and say, honestly, like if you just go and say, you know, wow, that's a really cool outfit, you know, whatever. I think that could just make someone's day. And, you know, again, like what we see on the outside versus what we see on the inside, like they could look like they get compliments all the time and that they're a superstar and whatever, but they could, you know, be feeling very small in that moment. Could be feeling the opposite of that. And those simple words might make a huge difference for them, you know. And so, yeah, I think that's an important thing as well.
So is that something that you kind of live by? Is that like you say what's on your mind?
Yeah,
and express yourself that way, right? You used the term earlier, but I was going to pick up on that about, you know, expressing yourself. Is that?
Yeah. I think that is actually something I haven't been fully aware that it's something that I do, but now I think about it. I think when I was younger, I definitely withheld a lot more. You know, I withheld a lot more from saying things, on impulses, on all that kind of stuff. And I think that coming into my acting journey and just, you know, becoming a man and everything else in these last couple of years, I have learned to kind of own my own voice a little bit more, and yeah, to you know, it's not always about just saying everything that comes into your mind, but I think it's important to, like, we talk about this in acting a lot, to follow your impulses, you know. And like just a simple example is like if you're in the scene and, you know, you're there and then you had the impulse to, you know, to do something, you know, you want to go for it, obviously as long as it's safe and consensual and everything, you know. But when you block those impulses, when you block, it really does show, and it reads in the performance, and something just doesn't sit quite right with the audience, feel quite right, and that's something that can help everything feel very natural in the frame as well, you know. And
It's like you're trying to contain it.
Yeah.
So that you like, if you're trying to contain something, I can imagine you could stiffen up a little bit and not be as free.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then that could very much show on camera, you know. But just to be clear, I'm not talking about like playing against, you know, in the sense of acting. I'm not talking about, you know, if the character wants one thing and then you're doing something else, like, you know, that's great. What I'm talking about is if you as the actor and you're in and you're feeling and you're in the body of that character, and you as a character have an impulse to do something, and then you as the actor say, no, don't do that, that's weird, or, you know, I don't see people on Netflix do that, so don't do that. That's when, you know, all of a sudden the actor voice is talking, and that's when you can get that stiffness, you know. Yeah.
Well, you're taking yourself out of flow, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Because now your brain's actually focusing on the voice in the head telling you what you should and what you shouldn't do, as opposed to just being.
I think that flow thing is huge, and like it's the same with me and when I'm playing basketball and I just get into this flow like autonomous state, and in that moment I'm really enjoying myself, I'm happy, I'm relaxed, I'm passionate. And also that was a time that, things that we talked about earlier in my childhood, that's when those things wouldn't be as prevalent. So like say, feeling excluded or feeling embarrassed or shamed out from the other kids, or also I've got OCD as well. When I was younger, it was like a pretty big thing in my life, and I found like when I was playing basketball, that was the one time that it wouldn't really take over my life or affect me in a negative way. It would just go. And I think that's what I've been trying to do, is get to this state with acting. And sometimes when you really are in that flow, like just like you said then, in that flow, in that scene, that's really beautiful. And I think that's probably a huge thing that people, that you've discussed on this show and everything, that are passionate about things, they get into that state, and that's when the magic happens,
Yeah. So the OCD side of things, you don't have to talk about this if you don't want to, but I'm genuinely interested. How did that kind of manifest itself for you as a young fella?
Well, there was quite a lot of in ways that it sort of manifested itself, and I think a big part of that, it really affected my sleep. After the busy day, when I lied down in bed, and finally was supposed to stop and rest, that was when a lot of it was affecting me then, and especially mentally. And for me, it came across in a few different mediums, a few different ways. Me just lying in my bed, with my eyes shut, it was so visceral, like the smell, the taste, everything, and it was incredible, the way it affected me. And then that and anxieties, they kind of worked off each other in a vicious cycle in a way. And then I'd be really anxious that I wasn't going to get enough sleep for school the next day. And I was thinking that was, the end of the world, that if I didn't get my 6 or 7 or 8 hours sleep or whatever, that I was just going to fall asleep in class, and then I was going to, get behind, and then I wouldn't be able to, get the job I wanted or whatever. And this is like primary school stuff. And, and I think it's just interesting, because I need a psychologist to unpick some of these things. But, I also felt like, my basketball, the pressure that I had for basketball, like being the captains of these teams and good teams with good reputations that were expected to win all the games, and that put a certain level of pressure on me as well. And being a young kid, when I first made the starting 5 of the best basketball team at Tauranga boys, and I was 15, I was in year 11, and there was boys that had been at the school for 5 years, that had been waiting for the opportunity to be in the first 5, and then I came along, and and that had another pressure on its own, and then all of a sudden I was just there, this nervous kid, expected to get 20 points and 10 rebounds a game or whatever, and everyone's watching on to make sure I do. And so that I think performance anxiety came into things a lot, and I know I'm going on a bit of a tangent here, but I think in terms of the OCD, the great thing is that it just became less prevalent in my life as I got older. Whatever happened, it's like it's still there. Like these little things that I still do within every 5 minutes or every 10 minutes, that's like evidence of that part of my life that people might not notice, but my parents and stuff do, of course.
Right, okay.
I used to annoy the crap out of my brother, because I'd need him to say things, and I'd say, you just do this and tap me on the shoulder twice. And then when it pulled in other people, involved other people, it really, could really annoy my brother and my mum and stuff like that. It was very full on. It was definitely a big part of my life. And
Sure.
And these days, like, it's just, it hasn't affected me. It doesn't affect me in the same negative way that it did back then. And it's very manageable for me now. And
But still there though, right?
yeah, and still there,
Right.
there. And basketball was one of the things that helped me through that, though.
And how did that help? I mean, I think it's interesting for anyone listening who
sure.
may actually have, OCD themselves. They might not recognize it. And now they will. They might know that they have. I think it's important to actually share different stories about and different perspectives on what that's like for you and how you've come to kind of, well, is manage it the right term?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think so, yeah, Steve. Yeah, and I remember I was like seeing a child psychologist every week or every couple of weeks or whatever, just to kind of help smooth things with it or get some advice around it and just everything that was, that was going on in my life at the time. And I remember he the person that we were working with at the time, because the thing was when it kind of restricted me was not just me needing to say things and make sounds, but all the sleep side of things, but just physically, like I was constantly needing to do stuff physically,
Right.
tapping things and feeling things and different textures and stuff, and it would just make my brain want to implode sometimes. Like I just couldn't get to that. If I was trying to leave to go to my training or whatever, I just couldn't get out the house without doing all these things and going back and turning off the light switch back on and off 6 times and doing this one 3 times and doing that once. And I remember when we were seeing this psychologist person, whatever, and I remember he gave me it was like a little thing that you put on your wrist, you could flick it. And he said, anytime you have, we called them habits anyway. That was the terminology we used. And he said, whenever these habits, when you feel the need that you need to do that, he said, what you can do is you can just have the one task where you just flick this and you try to resist all the urges for all that stuff. And you just flick this and just say, I'm the basketball boy. And at the time I was like, man, that's cheesy. I can't have people hearing me say that. And I don't know if the whole flicking thing, I don't know if that really, helped me too much or just would have ostracized me further at the time. But I think just again, it's one of those things where I just kind of push, keep pushing through, just keep my chin up, and and it really got to a point where I just had the self confidence and the ability where those things that they were more manageable for me. Sure. And now it's something that's so subtle that most people probably don't even know. And
absolutely.
And it's just so relieving to me after of how much it did affect me when I was younger. And just thinking about this now, because I hadn't really talked about this again. I haven't really talked about this at all really with people outside my family. But I can just remember all of the specific words and things that it used to be, and it was specific things. And for a few months at a time, it might just be a string of 7 words. And there was a while there for a couple of years where it did involve my brother, and we were both living at home, and I'd need him to say it to complete the habit, and I couldn't not have him say it. And he goes, "Trying to watch the TV, mate," and I'm just like, just say it, just say it. And then they're doing, they're like, all right, now just...
It's quite debilitating, eh?
Yeah. And I was just like, I just needed that to happen for me to move on, to go and do whatever I was going to do, my homework or whatever. I just needed that. I needed to get that from him, or do that myself if I could. So that was that was a pretty big part of things as well. But yeah,
was that something that you talked about being bullied at school, and I think the term was for a few things. Was that part of it? Were the behaviours at school, relative to what you've just been describing?
To be honest, not really.
Okay.
That really wasn't a huge aspect of it as far as I'm aware. I think that probably would have affected my behaviour in some ways, and it might have been a little bit different or whatever due to that in some ways. But the big thing for me was that with my confidence at the time, I would do everything in my power to be hiding those that interaction or that behaviour, or basically when the habits were coming through, I would be really trying hard for people to not be aware of that. But it would be very obvious and very prevalent for my brother and my family, because as soon as I get home, I could let the thing off the steam cap or whatever.
Right, okay.
But when I was at school, I wouldn't be involving, unless it was like a best friend here or there at primary, I wouldn't be involving them in the habits.
Sure.
And it was interesting,
Interesting that you could do that.
Yeah, exactly. That it could have such a strong hold over me.
Yeah.
But when I was playing basketball, it just wasn't there. For the first time, it wasn't there when I was in my flow playing basketball, and then obviously I was able to just contain it a bit more, and at school, which is also interesting, that I was able to manage those levels, but still be doing things perhaps a little bit more internally or when no one was around, but they would still be there.
Yeah.
But then when I was able to fully express it at home, it probably almost made it worse, So felt satisfying though.
Yeah, exacerbated at home. But I think what's interesting there is that you could manage it and control it at school, which maybe, I don't know, maybe you could answer this. Did that kind of give you an indication that you could manage it and get on top of it? Because it was less prevalent at school. It might have been there, but you were able to control it.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, Steve. And that was a huge one for me. Probably, again, more with the basketball side of things, knowing that, and I was thinking to myself when it was really affecting me, I was like, how come, last night my basketball game for 40 odd minutes, it just never, one of these thoughts never once came into my head. I didn't have to say this or do that, Of course, when I was putting on my shoes, I'd be doing all my things and touching the ball or whatever I was doing before the game. But when I was in the game, I wasn't there. And that was something like this whole full moon thing and whatnot. That was something that allowed me to see that it wasn't always going to be like this, and that I wasn't going to be 24/7 stuck in this little own cage of my own brain, my mind. And so that definitely would have been one of the things that able to help me push me through it. And I think at school I probably had a couple of other worries and things that were going on that weren't related. That weren't fully encompassing the OCD. So there's other stuff going on there. But I think that knowing that I could play a game of basketball and it could just be relieved was great.
Yeah, but also showed you, demonstrated to you that you can actually get relief from it and that you can manage or control it.
Yeah.
Look, I'm not a psychologist, right? But I've spoken to a few people now about things like this, that like disorders and stuff like that, whatever they call it, right? Whatever the term. They all sound very negative, really. But at the end of the day, the things that kind of, grab you and can get a grip of you and constrain you in some way, shape, or form. But it seems like, for me, it's a bit like speech impediments. And when, and I think back to, I don't know if you've ever seen it, the movie called The King's Speech, where when he listens to music, he's no longer got a speech impediment. It's like you've got an overly busy brain, but if you give it something, and it's not just something, it's your thing, whatever it is, to focus on, then that kind of stuff fades in the background. So it's like basketball was your thing, wasn't it?
Yeah. No, that's absolutely right. And I think that, for really busy people as well, like having that silence. Actually, I heard something the other day, and it's like for people that lead really busy lives and they've got lots of stuff going on and maybe struggling to get to sleep at night, and it was like when you get home, rather than just going straight to the stillness and the silence and just being in your head of all the things going on, as a stressed out person, you need to do something that actually stresses your body, that puts you in that stressful state before you're able to get to that. So if you have been running around at work like a headless chicken or whatever, and then you get home, just going for like a 10-minute walk or, something like that, that's actually is putting a little bit of stress on your body there, a little bit of stress on your body and your mind. And that is actually what's needed for someone that's in that situation to be able to get to that point of stillness and rest and silence,
Right.
So, so I guess that's just like, when you're fully flowing, when you're listening to the music and it's helping with your speech, it's like whatever it is for you that enables you to get there. And I wish I had all the answers for everyone and I could help everyone that is going through that, but I guess that might be a bit of a trial and error kind of thing, where if you sit down and have a think about it, what might have worked for you in the past.
Maybe that. I think that's maybe the thing. And again, I'm not, I don't know, but again, just based on numerous conversations that I've had, I think it's like a lot of things in life. You've got to find out what works for you. You got to find that thing but the important thing is, and you sharing it, and I'm grateful for you sharing this stuff. Like you've said, you've never really talked about it too much outside of your family. So I appreciate you opening up and sharing that with us. I think it's important for people to hear and understand that so many people are dealing with these kind of things. But the important thing is as well to know that there is actually light at the end of the tunnel. There is a full moon, like you just described. There is a full moon again.
Yeah,
there is a way of actually dealing with it. You've just got to find your way. And I think, again, with most people that I've spoken to, it's being able to talk about it with the right people who can give you some help and guidance, and then you find your way.
Yeah, that's right.
There's so many people that probably don't talk about things.
Yeah.
And are trying to cope with it themselves. And again, it's that lack of expression, isn't it? You're trying to control it again.
Yep, that's right. I think that there's a lot that can be improved or can help if you do take that sort of that risky step or that vulnerable step and actually do talk to someone about it. And I know that I do come from a privileged position that I've got ear that's willing to listen to that, and I know that that's not the case for everyone, but I think if you do have the opportunity, even though it might seem scary, I think it really can help when you do talk about things that arise. And you'd probably be surprised, because sometimes we imagine in our head, we presume what the reaction is going to be before we even say it. And just like you said, most people have got things like this going on. The person you're talking to probably does as well. And if you talk to them, then that might give them the confidence to be able to talk about what's going on for them, either to you or to someone else that they feel comfortable doing that, which is going to be a positive chain reaction for people in terms of seeking help and not bottling everything up and keeping it to themselves.
Yeah, for sure. I'd like to take a moment to talk about one of our sponsors. I'm really pleased to announce that we have Sharp New Zealand as a sponsor. And it's great to have Sharp on board because as a customer, I can speak about their products and services from personal experience. And it feels good to be able to endorse and recommend a company because of the level of satisfaction we have regarding the services they provide. And across my businesses, we've certainly been impressed with the care and collaboration we've experienced in our dealings with Sharp. It's certainly a brand that we trust. Sharp has a long history of creating breakthrough products designed to meet the needs of people living in New Zealand. Sharp's leadership in technology innovation ensures it's at the forefront of the pack, providing business solutions from printing and photocopying to interactive meeting solutions and ICT phone systems. No matter where you are or what size your organisation, whether you're large or small, Sharp New Zealand can provide their services to you nationwide. If you're looking to upgrade your technology or renew your photocopier leases, talk to your local Sharp team or visit the website at sharp.net.nz. We've mentioned the term expressing yourself a few times now. I'd really like to talk about your acting career.
Oh, yeah.
And how that started, right? So you've said that you're at university and you were playing basketball at a high level, and had options in that direction. But then you've changed direction.
Yeah.
And so, can you talk us through a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure, Steve. It was such an interesting one because I really didn't know at one point if I was going to be like an investment banker or a professional basketballer or an actor, And I was really loving the finance and economics stuff as well. It really was, and had a great couple of opportunities that I was able to do some interning at investment banks, and I got to pop over to Sydney and do a little bit of stuff with Morgan Stanley's over there and everything, and and I remember I was like, at the time I was flatting with a couple of guys that loved making movies, and they didn't like being on the front of the camera, but they loved. One of them was doing the camera work, and the other one, he was really good on the CGI on the computer, doing explosions and fights. They love filming fight scenes, and they did the sound and the camera and stuff, and I remember I was doing my finance and stuff, and I was doing my basketball, and then I seen this thing pop up, and they were trying to audition for one of their school projects or whatever. There's a drama school in Hamilton, and I thought, oh, what the heck? It seems like a cool idea. It was called Wands like Harry Potter wands, and it was like these two detectives, and one of them was like really strong, good-looking, charismatic, and he had all the superpowers, but it was like a bit dumb or whatever. And then the other one is like a smaller fella. He's a detective, and he knew everything there was to know about spells and magical powers and everything, and all the intricacies around it, but he just simply wasn't magical. And it was in a magical world, he just didn't have the powers. And it was this, and we were like two detective partners, and I was like twice the size and stuff. But I auditioned for that, and I met the guys through that, and we did that. It was awesome. And still, my old man's actually got the movie poster up in his office at his work still. And that was going back a little bit now, because I started uni in 2015. And anyway, within a couple of months, I was flatting with these two guys, and every weekend we were filming. We'd go down to Mystery Creek, you know. I love filming in the Tron because it was like mystical mornings and it was all foggy, you know, and we'd always be up at the crack of dawn and we'd be go to the forests and down by the gardens there. We found a couple of cool spots down by the river and it'd be all foggy and misty, and we'd film little vampire movies. And they really, like I said earlier, they did really love their fight stuff, eh? Like if you look on the YouTube channel, it was a lot of that, and it was me on the front of the camera and them behind the camera, and all their mates being extras, and we're doing all sorts of things, you know. And like I'd come in and it was great because I kind of learned how to be on set, you know. I learned about you know, how we start off with like an establishing shot and how you work through and you get tighter and tighter, and then you might finish on that close up, and how you want to kind of save the juice for that, and you know, just all these little etiquette things, and the mics, and you know, takes and rehearsals and blocking, and you know, that was a way that I learned those things, and I loved working with those guys, and then I wanted to try things on a bigger scale.
Sorry, can I just ask? So those were your flatmates, is that right?
Yeah.
So were they studying?
Yeah,
like,
so
filmmaking?
they were both studying filmmaking in Hamilton, and they put out an audition notice, and I didn't even know them at this time for this thing, you know. And I went there and I did the audition, and I'd never really done much acting at all. And then they were like, "Oh, you're perfect for the role," and I did that, and and I just got along really well with them. And then like within a couple of months, they'd become my best friends.
Right.
We'd all moved into a flat together, and over the next 3 or 4 years at uni, while I was doing everything else, we proceeded to make our own short films, and they would do all the technical stuff, and I'd be in front of the camera. So I was always in the front of the camera, and it was great because I was learning to get used to the cameras and get used to not. I remember when I used to, even just the presence of like, just seeing that black camera, that electronic device in the corner of the room would make me feel red, or make me feel hot, or make me feel aware, or make me feel stiff, you know, and that was something I knew I had to get over. And I got some really great tips about that, like specific acting stuff as well, like if we get to that or whatever. But that was what was sort of happening. And then like I was saying, Steve, I wanted to try it on the next scale, you know, being on an actual TV series. And at that point in time, without like, you know, having much training under my belt, the only option was to, you know, try doing some extra work. So I ended up working on West Side. It was like season 3 and season 4. I was like, you know, and it was awesome, and I loved being on set, you know. And they were transporting us in the van from the TV studio down to the location. And I remember, you know, the actors had their slides and they were reading their things, and I was helping them rehearse and reading the thing. I was like, wow, this is so cool. Like, imagine if I had a character with a name and I had my own slides. And I was like, what do I have to do to get from where I am now to have my own slides and be on the way to location to read lines in front of the camera? Yeah. And then
But where did that passion come from then? So I mean, because you were studying finance, basketball, and then you auditioned.
Yeah.
So, but you know, was there a part of you that kind of was interested in acting? And
well, look, the thing that I was interested in was I loved the whole like, you know, like showmanship, and I love, you know, Mum would take me to the theatre, and you know, we'd go and see shows, and we went and seen the Connor College high school show, and a guy that was in my rugby team played Peter Pan in it. And he did an amazing job, and I was like, I thought it was just the coolest thing ever. And I always had this back and forth relationship where I would have loved to have done the drama and the acting, but like as I mentioned before about my schedule of the trainings, it just simply wasn't possible, you know. And even in the drama school, like the period that was in the day, it was at the same time as this thing at Tauranga Boys is called Titans. And there's basically like the best player from each sporting code in the school was in it, you know, and that was in the same period as drama, you know, and I had to be in that representing basketball, of course, you know, and it was only in the last year that they put me in there, and I said to them, my English, because I loved English, I loved movies, I loved TV shows, like my room was just covered in movie posters, you know, and I was obsessed like with you know, the idea of acting in movies and stuff, but I just had never had the space to be able to make that first step, you know. And it wasn't until I got in front of the camera, you know, when I was at uni and I met those fellas, you know, Dwight and Cody, and I was just like, wow, this is different, this is cool.
Yeah, it's interesting how you were fascinated with all of that, but yet you were going down the sports and the finance side of things. You know,
exactly,
you hadn't
exactly.
of maybe found your element yet.
Yeah, that's right. Because I really felt like I had found my element in lots of ways, Steve. And it was interesting that I hadn't always considered that as a serious option. And I remember going to a career counselor, and I remember that she was saying that I could, because we had to work out what degree I was going to do as well. Because at that time I'd gotten offered the full ride, but I hadn't, I didn't know what I was going to study or anything, and I hadn't really made any plans apart from basketball. And all of a sudden, they're like, right, what are you going to study for the next 4 years? Because when you finish basketball, that's going to be your career potentially, and I sort of, had to pick. So I wasn't always hugely into business necessarily, but I knew that that was something that would lead to career opportunities. So that was where that came from. And then I just fell in love with it as I was going. And obviously, I loved my basketball, and then sort of some of those opportunities for the drama side of things came up. And I remember that career counselor sort of saying, why don't you do your business, play your basketball, and it'll pay for your business degree, and then you can go and get a great job, and you can do a bit of community theatre on the weekend, or after work you can do a little bit of a whatever. And that was just kind of, I guess that was sort of what was drilled into me, and then and I've met people now that do acting all the time, that do live and work in the film industry constantly, and that is their job, and there is a lot of career opportunity, not just within the acting department, but in the film industry in general. That is actually something, if you really like that, and film and TV does excite me. Yeah, so that's probably why I hadn't fully considered it as a serious thing, because I was probably too scared to, take that leap and not have that background security, which I can imagine like a lot of people have that kind of feeling,
Yeah, I think I can understand that. I mean, it's a little bit like a lot of the arts, isn't it? It's like, it's hard to kind of make your way in certain things. What were your parents like in respect of you pursuing this path? I mean, obviously, like we've said repeatedly, you're at university, you're doing well in other areas, and then all of a sudden you want to take this tack and look at acting as a career. Was that a conscious decision, by the way, at that point in time, or is that kind of evolved?
Yeah.
At what point did you decide to sort of move in that direction, and what support did you get?
Those are both great questions, Steve. I remember there was one point in particular when I was in my third year, 3 out of the 4 years at uni, and I was having a bit of a bad experience with a certain paper, with a certain assignment, and I'm not going to get into the details too much, but anyway, I remember I called up Dad actually, and this was the time where I just started doing these short films, and I thought it was awesome. And I'd actually, when I did that extra work and I was figuring out what to do, and they said, oh, you need to get some proper training, like go to some proper classes, if you want to get your own script one day. So I was actually driving up, to and from Auckland a couple of times a week, one for voice class and one for my screen acting class, and I was starting to, get in the swing of things and get in the groove of things, and my coach at the time was saying, you need to do the actors program. It's a 1-year drama school, because I just, finished 4 years. I did my finance and economics, and I also did a German language degree, German and advanced linguistics as well, because it was all paid for. I was like, oh, I might as well. And I did summer schools the whole way through, so I could still do the 5 years and 4 years, and then anyway, so I said, right, I called Dad and I says, so there's this like, I'd love to go and do this drama school, and I started talking about what was going on with my paper at the time, and I ended up going into tears about it, and I really wasn't happy. But it was just in that moment, in these last couple of months, that it got me feeling like that. It wasn't the whole experience of uni, and he said, look, mate, you're almost at the end of your third year. There's 3 years. Like, if you stop now, it's just like, just finish it off. Like, it's all paid for and covered and everything. Just finish it off, and then you got that certificate, and no one can take that away from you. So yeah, we ended up, staying and pursuing that. And then, so that was the moment where I was like, that was a time where I would have potentially, consciously decided I wanted to do acting, and would have potentially have left what I was doing to go and pursue that. So there was that moment. And then in terms of how my parents responded to this, changing career and whatnot, the second part of that question, I think what happened is that, of course, Mum was always like, whatever makes me happy, honey, like, that's great. And then with Dad, it was like a little bit more of a. I think the thing is like Dad's always had to work so hard and have his own back because he didn't always have all that other. Um, like he didn't necessarily have the same privileges that I did growing up. And I think he was worried that if I was going to do, say, a creative career, which as we know is not as necessarily going to be as consistent or financially stable as it would be doing a typical Monday to Friday job, one where you have to go and seek out your own work and make it happen in a sense of music and whatever. And but it was actually really cool because like after, a couple of years of me just finishing uni and doing my classes and, sort of seeing what was going to happen. I think when I actually did start getting some successes as well, in the TV and film industry, that might have, changed tune a little bit on things. And then also, I think there was that aspect that, Dad, he did sort of start coming around to the idea. Also probably just seeing, how passionate and happy I was doing that stuff. And then third and foremost, was that also like I've still kind of got the analytical and business mind, and I think that he's seen that I, haven't just thrown in everything that I've got going on and put all my eggs into one basket. And one thing that helps me, Steve, is like when I did have all my eggs in that one basket, and I was living in Auckland at the time, and I was working in a bar, and it was actually made me feel a bit anxious working in that bar. I don't know if it was just hospital in general or that, but I was just making enough money just to pay my rent, just so that I could be there in Auckland to audition for any opportunities that might come along. So fully committing my whole life and my career development, just on those chances. And then I'm doing things slightly different now, and I think that's probably something that's really helped my parents relax, and also for them to be even extra supportive of the acting side of things because they know that I am going to be okay, that I am going to be able to feed myself and feed my family one day, and also pursue these creative things. And I'm lucky I've got in a position where I can do all of that.
Yeah. So I'm interested in your perspective on this. Around the advice from your dad about finishing your degree. I probably would think that that's a sensible approach, maybe, and advice. But the reason why I'm sort of touching on that is, finishing your degree and at least having that. And I'm not a big advocate of backup plans or plan Bs because I think it's splitting your focus. But at least having that under your belt, did that in any way take the pressure off you, knowing that actually I can give this a go? But I've not got all my eggs in one basket.
Yeah, I fully see where you're coming from that one, Steve. And my acting coach would have shot me if she heard me talking about the idea of a backup plan.
Yeah.
She goes, my acting class, there are no,
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's a huge part of it. And, and I can definitely see how that does split your focus, absolutely. And I think what happened with me is that when that was my whole focus, and I don't know if this was like some of my old OCD things coming back or what, but I put a lot of pressure on myself, and there was this almost like thickness in the air when I'd go to auditions because I was desperate to get a role because I wasn't enjoying what I was doing, and outside of that, like the work I was doing, the flat conditions and everything. Like that was putting up with that so that I could get to that audition room and hopefully get some roles, so you could probably feel that on me when I went in the room, so that what I found for me was splitting my focus in a sense. Actually I just want to quickly touch on how you said about having the degree and if that gave me a bit of relief, and I guess I'm probably it's hard for me to speak to that objectively because I'm in the privileged position of having a degree behind me. But the thing is I don't really have any intention to use that degree as a way of going and getting a job or anything anytime soon. So in that sense, I don't feel like that's helped me.
But would you if you didn't have it? I suppose that's a question you can't answer, right? But that's the kind of angle I'm coming from
thinking.
because
Yeah.
just based on what you were saying there as well around like being desperate to get a role. and comments you made earlier around if your sort of mind's focused on something and you're not in the flow, so having to make things work, and that's where I was coming from with the kind of backup thing. I don't really agree with it myself, even though I said it, but those little things, they're not little things, but they are really in the sense of grand scheme of things, but they all pile up to be kind of weight on your shoulders that when you walk into an audition or a job interview or whatever it is, it's kind of sitting on your shoulder and it's affecting who you are in that moment.
Yeah.
Whereas sometimes I think if you've got, not necessarily a backup plan, but if the pressure's off, then you can be at your best.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's just negotiating how you can get to that point, hey? And, now I probably will reconsider my answer in a way. I'd say, like, I think in a normal person in my situation, like having that degree there, that would be really, that would be a great mental factor that would help someone, relax and know that they do have another option. I'm really lucky in the sense that I personally actually do have a job and income that I can have, and I always, at least in the near future, will have, that's outside of acting, that I wouldn't have needed my degree for. But it was kind of a thing that, with my basketball and stuff, that was just kind of, what sort of ended up happening. But what I will say is I learned a lot of stuff when I was doing those studies that I use in my life now, absolutely. But I think like I get, what you're getting at, and I think that absolutely, like if you do have, not necessarily a backup plan, but if you have something else that you're passionate about as well, something that can take all of the mind, all of the pressure off in a way that can help you really go into your flow state when you are doing what you love. And it's something that's specific with acting, where it's like that speaks to this, where it's like people, that trying too hard to impress the casting director and to show off how great of an actor you are, that doesn't always work in your favor, And it's not about, showing how great you are going from crying 1 second to being angry to being happy. It's just about, nailing that character in that scene in that moment. And it might just be a light conversation like you and me are having right now. So it doesn't need to be all of that emotional stakes every time. And I think that, like, whatever it is for you, if something's able to help you get to that point where you can get into that flow state and just enjoy and have fun, and maybe that is if you've got a career where you know that you've got that you're going to be able to put a roof above your head, and that you are going to be able to have kids one day, and buy school uniforms for them or whatever. These are all things that I thought about when I was trying to work out if I was going to be a professional basketballer or an actor, and yeah, absolutely. And it's been huge for me, Steve, going from how I talked about how I was feeling in Auckland versus how I feel when I'm going into the room now, and it's like a whole different ball game mentally for me.
Yeah, sure. So, it's important, as we've talked about, to do stuff that you love, that you're in your element and that you enjoy. I've always sort of, not always, but I suppose in recent times, thought that actually if you're doing what you're good at, or doing what you love, then you get good at it. And if you're in that situation, then the opportunities will come.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? They'll kind of not find you, but you'll be more open to seeing them when you've not got that pressure on. If you're doing stuff that you don't like and you're desperately trying to get out of it, I think that changes your kind of mindset and you don't see the opportunities in front of you, right?
Yeah, exactly, Steve. And like, again, trying not to get too wishy-washy, but, talking about the law of attraction as well. And, if it's something that you're really not enjoying and you're really not really wanting to be there, I don't think that, you're going to see all the small moments and things that you might have enjoyed and certain opportunities and things that may have presented themselves. You just won't be in the right space or the right capacity to embrace that. Yeah. But if it is something that you really love doing and you enjoy, and yeah, of course, you're gonna excel at it. You're gonna get better at it. You're gonna improve. You're gonna learn. You're gonna grow. You're gonna be soaking everything in like a sponge because you want to do the best job that you can, and you want to, because you're just interested in it. So I think it's definitely like a seed growing. If you're working in a space, if you're lucky enough to be able to work in a space of something that you do really enjoy. That's pretty, it's a pretty hard thing to find, like even me, like when there's, if I'm not working on an acting show or whatever, and I'm trying to think like, what's something that I really enjoy? And then, I always go back, what about basketball? That took over your life for the last 20 years.
Mm.
And that's something I've just been going back to, just joined up in the local men's league and I've been playing the last couple of months. It's been awesome.
Yeah.
But I had a bit of a break from that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So look, let's talk a bit more about your the acting side of things, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
I think what I imagine in the short while that I've known you, what I imagine is that you've probably applied yourself to acting the same way that you did with basketball, rugby, or whatever else it was you were doing. So
Exactly.
you've already talked about, going on a year-long course and having acting classes, and I'm sure you've done lots of other things as well. So for anyone who's interested in that kind of process about how to get into acting, particularly TV and film,
Mm-hmm.
theatre is another sort of element of it.
Mm-hmm.
But I imagine that there's, I'm going to retract that. I'm just going to say I imagine that it's easier to get into theatre, but I'm talking about at a local level. There's options for people. TV and film seems to look a bit more of a stretch for people.
Yeah,
And that's where you've headed, and that's the direction that you've gone in. So
yeah.
if you could maybe talk to us a little bit about that journey, about what it's taken to get to where you've got to, and then maybe expand on where you have got to, and tell us the kind of things you've been doing.
Of course, yeah. No, thanks, Steve. I think that in terms of getting to that professional level, for both TV and film and theatre, professional theatre, that's a really hard industry to crack and to get your foot in the door for sure. There's a lot of people that would love the opportunity, and there's a lot of classes out there of a lot of fantastic actors of all ages and and all demographics and everything. That are working away and training away, but they just haven't had that opportunity to get that first role or whatever. And it's definitely one of those things. It's like if you're hiring someone for anything, you get people in that you'd like to work with and you can see yourself working with all the time and that can do a great job. And if you can't go online and see something that they've done, or if you don't know them from a bar of soap or whatever, then it is a really why would you cast them? So it is a really obviously it can be quite a hard industry to crack in that sense. And I think for young people or just people that are considering getting into that, getting involved with this, and if that's something that you're quite into, I think the one of the biggest things is that you got to work out if that's what you want to do and why it is that you think that would be cool, because there's a lot of people trying to get in the industry. There already is a lot of people in the industry, and I remember when I was at that year-long drama school, and on the it was actually the audition for the drama school. It was like a week audition process, and at the very end of it, there was like a real Flash actor who was in all the Flash movies and stuff, and he was talking to us, and he was just like, something like, you got to make sure that there's nothing else in this world that you could do that's not acting. Like if there's anything else you could possibly do and you think you could be happy, then just go. Then just leave. Don't do this. It's not for you, because there's going to be times where it's really going to try you. And at the time when I left drama school, I was really fortunate because I was actually in drama school that I got my first TV role, and I snuck off and auditioned and whatever, and and then after that the ball started rolling, and I got my foot in the door, and it was like I got to build a rapport with the casting directors and the directors and stuff in New Zealand and everything, and got a few back-to-back roles, and there's times there was only days or hours in between me going from set to set or shoot to shoot or whatever, and it was great. And I was just like, and I remember at the time at drama school they were sort of saying like, it's probably going to be maybe 5% of you that would still be interested in doing this in a couple of years' time. Maybe in 10 years' time, maybe one of you, if anything. And I was like, I'm the lucky few, woohoo. And we did that for a couple of years, and then it's just one of those things where things kind of come in streaks and stuff, and it just doesn't, and because I had a warped perception of how things were going to go, because I was like, oh great, I'm never gonna have to get a day job again. I'll just be going from set to set for the rest of my life, and I'll be in LA in 6 months, and that's just how you learn as well. Because I'm still only young, and I'm still learning all these things myself. So I think if you're like interested in getting in the industry, work out if that's if there is anything else that that you could do. And I mean, I don't fully agree with that opinion, because like there is other stuff in life that would make me happy, but like I really love doing acting as well, and I want to have a crack at getting all the opportunities I can for that, and I also want to survive at the same time, and build a life for myself and my future family at the same time. So it's not black and white, and it's really different. Depends on everyone's personal circumstances, whatever you guys got going on at home over there. But like the main thing is you got to be in to win as well. And and this is also for one of those things, once you start auditioning and everything, and I'll get to the point about how to get to that stage. But when you do start auditioning and stuff, like it's almost like, if you think about it in the sense that if you don't have that lotto ticket for that audition, no matter how far stretched it may seem, like shooting in Japan, looking for recognizable face, whatever, and you go, oh, I got an audition for this one. And it's just like, if you don't go for it, you just never know. And it's like, I feel like people over the years have just constantly been saying this, saying these things to me, like you got to be in the pool to win, and actors start to leave the pool, and then there's less people in your demographic, and all of a sudden, you get to, in your late 20s, your early 30s, and they're looking for me, looking for that tall young dad role or whatever, and people do drop out, and there is, less competition in a sense. And then you got New Zealand, and you talk about being in a small pond here, and you talk about wanting to go into that space of being like a big fish in a small pond, and then making your leap into the other ponds, that kind of thing. I could just talk about this forever. I think before I will just say, if you are just listening and you're wanting to know what to do from being in your position right now to being in the industry, the first thing that you want to do is you need to get an agent for starters. You need to be represented is in New Zealand. It's very uncommon that you wouldn't be represented by anyone, and that you would is considered not etiquette to contact casting directors or producers as an actor yourself. So you need to but before you can get that, because it's not easy to get representation, or the kind of representation that you want, and there's different levels to the potential for that, and there's lots of different agents, and in order for an agent to take you onto their books and to start working for you, and to putting you out there, you got to show them what you're made of. And to do that, you need to get film a couple of scenes of yourself, doing a couple of scenes, work out what it is that's your commodity in this industry. Are you the tan, hot, surfy boy, jock, school captain, whatever, American jock, whatever, like the sort of things that I've been, slipping into in these couple of years? Or, are you the girl next door? Or are you like the best mate? And, work out what it is, and then get a couple of scenes from actual TV shows, that are like, that kind of character, and then, transcribe if you got to write down the lines, and then learn it, and then, put on an outfit and film the scene. That way you've got an actual scene, you've got some footage that you can show, if you were to represent me and you got me an audition, and this is the kind of roles you'd be putting me up for, this is what I can do.
Yeah.
And then they go, well, that's bookable. Like, I believe that performance, I think that's bookable. Like, someone would book you, then that'd be great. It's a great business move, isn't it, to get you on the books, because then, that's what it's all about, and I'd say, I probably missed a pretty big step right there, which is to get to the point where you can sit down and film a video and be happy with it like that, is that there's that little thing called training, and it's easy to kind of bypass that step, but I think it's important, because, if you really want to make your performances be able to, to move people. Actually, I think if you just relying on your natural talent and your looks, that can only ever get you so far, and especially when you start competing against all these other people that have been in the industry for years, and kid actors, and it's like, you know, if it comes down to two like good looking people or whatever, but then there's someone that's already got a great reputation with people in the industry and stuff, you know, you really gotta, you know, you gotta have some kind of yeah, you know, I don't want to keep using the word training, but there's all sorts of acting gods and there's all sorts of
Yeah.
classes and
It's down to
skills.
credibility, right? At the end of the day,
Yeah.
it's a craft, it's a skill. It's not just
Yeah.
anyone can turn up and do it. You've got to put in, like you say, with any with anything, I suppose you've got to put in to demonstrate that you're worthy of it.
Yeah, exactly. So I hope that in a kind of sped up sense would somehow sort of show how you could go from, you know, being sitting here listening to this podcast to actually, you know, getting potentially having a career in the TV and film or the professional theatre industry. And when you've got a great agent, you'll be getting put out for professional theatre and TV and film, and those are all very hard things to crack into. A friend of mine, he got a really cool role in a professional theatre show, you know, and I haven't even auditioned for a professional theatre show in my whole career, you know, so that's is certainly not an easy thing to get into. But there are opportunities to do theatre shows more locally and stuff like that as well. You know, where you can meet like-minded people and stuff too. So you guess you got to work out what it is that, you know, that's sort of driving you and getting you off in this sense, and what, you know, what it is that where you want to be and where you see yourself, what you're wanting to get out of it, you know. And again, like you briefly mentioned before, like what I was putting into my basketball, I then just went and put that into the acting, you know. And I was just doing a lot of late night driving, you know, from Hamilton up to Auckland and back, and doing these classes, you know, these night classes and things. And, you know, being a classic New Zealander sportsman, I had a bit of a mumble, you know, when I talked, and I had to learn to articulate myself and whatnot, and do some speech classes and things to get to the point where you're aware of how you're speaking, and then to add, you know. And then if we're talking about doing a TV show here and you are playing a Kiwi character or a first 15 captain, then they probably will have a bit of that kind of mumble in there. So it's like, first of all, being aware of how you can talk clearly and whatever, and then adding a little bit of that blur, a little bit of that mumble, adding that in there as a character choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's obviously you've had some success, which is great. What's your tell me what was your favourite role so far, and why? What was
I really I really enjoyed working on that Tim Roth film Punch. Um, First of all, because it was my first movie that came out in the cinemas, and we rented out the whole row of seats, and I had all my nanas and grandmas and stuff, and we were all down there, and then they all jumped up and clapped at the end, you know. And then someone came down and goes, "Oh, what one of you is the actor?" And we're like, "Wait, what? How'd you know that?" And they're like, "Oh, I just assumed because you got the whole family here." It's like, "Oh, it's the tall boy," you know. And I think the good thing about that was coming up from a sporting background has helped me transition into the industry a little bit smoother, maybe, you know. And the roles that I've had have been sort of surfers and rugby players and boxers. And this one was a boxer, and we had the women's Olympic boxing coach was our on-set advisor. So like in pre-production, you know, for a couple of months, I was traveling up to Auckland each week, and I was working with him, working with Cam on all the technical side of things, you know. And because when I was in my audition, you know, I told them about how great of a boxer I was, of course, you know. But that was more just a weekly fitness class where you're just skipping rope in a boxing ring or hitting a bag. It was very different, you know. And then when we went and we did the screen test, and they had me, you know, there was someone that had been doing the boxing training for like with this guy, but for months before I came on board. And they said, "All right, let's have a bit of a spar, you know, and not actually touch each other, but just moving around in the space." And of course, you know, you got the producers and the stunties and everything, and man, I was so tired, eh? I was like, we're a couple of minutes in, and I was like, crap, man, and it was hard work, really hard fitness work, and we sort of went from there. And he goes, "I thought you said that you," and I was just like, "We'll get there." And it wasn't up until the actual day of one of the days of the shoots, we were shooting the actual boxing physical scenes, because you got your dialogues and your drama scene, you got that, and we're actually shooting that scene. And then, you know, I remember the coach was like holding me like this, and he was just like, and he's like, "All right, give me a left right combo, a left right hook," and then like, you know, he's like my footwork, and he goes, "All right, well, I can say that you look less ugly now than you did when we first started working with you. And I was just like, sweet.
Yeah,
That was my confidence booster prep talk. And then we went and shot the scene, and yeah, Tim was in that one, and it was a cool experience working with Tim. And I remember we were there, we were in this we were in the room where we were shooting the boxing scenes, and it was so cool. It was like all dark and moody, and they got all these old newspaper clippings and aged them to make them look like they've been up there for years, and photoshopped our faces into them. And like my boxing gloves and my shorts were all been sitting out in the sun for weeks and making it all aged and golden, and we're rolling around we got spray tanned up, and we're rolling around on the floor and wrestling around in the scenes and stuff. And it got to the point where Tim comes into the scene and like, all right, let's get Tim in from his trailer. And then, and we got all the lighting and got everything perfect. And did a couple of takes, and then Tim comes in and he just nails it every time, right from the start. Just comes in okay, boom, this natural, absolute, everything came across as natural, and especially when he was playing that he was drunk and whatever, and the way he just stumbled in, it was just awesome. So
What was that? What was that like? I mean, I've got more questions about this, but I mean, working with someone like Tim Roth, who's internationally recognised actor, great actor. Getting an opportunity like that, how did that feel?
It felt. I remember when we were there, and we were shooting the scene, and I'd just been knocked out in the boxing match, and then it was a bit of a dirty move, and I'm sort of there, and then he comes over and he sort of picks me up, and he's holding me, he's like, all right, you right, mate? You right, mate? You right, mate? And I was just like, whoa, this is cool. and then I was just remember thinking, where's the cameras? Oh, the camera's there, they can see me. Yeah, all right, great. I'm in a scene with Tim Roth. Perfect. It was good. It was good. It was really cool, and it was inspiring to see how much he just committed himself to it. There's absolutely no holding back, and we're talking about being in your flow autonomous state before, and it's something about that security of knowing that you've got that reputation and that you've got all that work and probably the financial side of things and everything, nothing to worry about, and you're just fully in that flow state. And I think if we can almost reconstruct that feeling and put it into our our day-to-day lives or our everyday tasks, or just every time that we're approaching this thing that we enjoy and this passion and stuff, if you can sort of reconstruct that feeling of that flow state and sort of dribble that into everything that you do, I think you're always going to be putting your best foot forward.
Sure. And what about hiring the front row of the cinema out and being there with your family watching that? What was that like?
That was so gorgeous. It was such a gorgeous day, and it was. I remember also just seeing being able to sit down in front of the TV or whatever, and watch my first time I came on TV with the fam and stuff, and obviously it was a very special moment. Well, I think the best thing is always just the feeling of when you're leaving set, because it's months and months down the track before it actually comes out, or years or whatever. And that first time when I first left the set of Head High, and I was so excited. And when I first got there, my first day, it was sort of, I was so nervous, and then I was coming home and I went and got myself a can of soda and a couple of chocolate bars from the dairy, come home and celebrate, and it's definitely brilliant to be able to sit around and do that. And my grandparents all love it. They're always asking me to send them the links to things or send them pictures to things and whatnot. And whenever I'm on the way home from an audition, I just had one in Auckland at the end of last week, and I usually take that time to catch up with everyone, and I was like, hey Siri, ring Nana Judy. Hey Siri, ring Nana. Hey Siri, ring Papa and Pam. And I just fill everyone in and let them know what's going on and how I got on and stuff. So that's nice that someone, that doesn't make you feel like you're on the journey alone or whatever, which is cool.
Yeah. And so what about the future then? What's your ambitions and aspirations for the future of Connor then? Where do you see yourself in 5-10 years time?
Honestly, Steve, I think that that keeps on seeming to change for me, you know what I mean? And I feel like my whole life I've just had I've always felt like I've had to control everything. Like I've had to know what the next step is and know what's going on. And I guess in a way I've been kind of relinquishing that feeling of needing to control everything a little bit lately, and trying to kind of go with the flow and embrace opportunities that come my way, and embrace and nurture the relationships that are like present in my life, and like a lot of like my best mates and stuff, like they're all overseas and stuff, and so you gotta, and embrace the relationships that you do have here, and I think in terms of my future, like going forward, I'm really looking forward to seeing what kind of opportunities that I'm going to be getting in the TV and film industry. I think that there's a lot of exciting stuff happening, and I do feel like I've got a really good feeling that there's going to be some great stuff coming, and there is some cool stuff in the works at the moment, and there's a couple of things that we've shot that are yet to come out, and so there's always sort of something in the pipeline, and we got some good news. We did a show, and this was the good thing about technology these days is not only can you send in a self-tape audition from all around the world, and you can audition for things that are going to be shooting in other places, but they're also making series, like TV series, to be on social media platforms, and if you think about it, like if your target market is for younger people or whatever, like I mean, ever since I've been at uni, I haven't had channels 1, 2, and 3 on my TV, but back when I'm at the Rents house, of course I do, but like we did the show, and it was funded by Screen Australia and NZ On Air and TikTok, and it was to make was it 5 or 6 or 5 episodes of 5 minutes long, and it's on TikTok, on Instagram, on Facebook, designed at the young market, and it racked up a couple of million views. And we just got announced the funding to turn it into an actual TV series, which is going to be on TV3 and 3 Now on demand. So
that's interesting, That it's a different way of piloting something, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It's like a pilot season. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So so there's that, and like we wrapped on a comedy film at the end of last year, and I'm really looking forward to that. And but not just acting as well, but I really do love writing. And I do. I've written a film as well that I'm wanting to do. And when we were at the actors program, we wrote a series that we shot a pilot on our own sort of time and money and whatnot, and then we're really lucky that we got funding to turn that into a not a TV show but a web series. It was about decent $250,000 or whatever, and but these things cost so much, to make things like this. It's so expensive, and that's why when you look at the economy and whatnot in New Zealand as of late, you can see why there hasn't been as many big scale productions and stuff going on here, because as soon as the checkbooks get to tighten up a little bit, but we went from filming this to actually putting it, to actually being able to pay crew and do it all properly, and it was on TVNZ on demand and whatever, so I got to start off my sort of writing with doing that. We all wrote an episode each, and then when it got to the next funding level, then the producing thing sort of took over from there. But that was a nice little taste for me, and I think that there's definitely a lot of writing and producing in my near future to be had.
Right.
I can definitely see myself, writing, even producing the film that I'm working in as well. Further down the line, and so there's that in terms of my future in acting. That would answer that, but I do have interest in other things as well, and I've been really enjoying doing some house renos lately, and when I moved down here and moving back down here from Auckland, and I managed to get a beautiful 80s home that big pink spa baths and bamboo tiki Bali hut looking flooring and Samoan tapa as wallpaper up on the walls, and I've been really enjoying renovating up the bathrooms and the kitchen and stuff, and I want to keep doing it, and I think like property and property development, property investment is real estate and stuff like that is something that really excites me as well. So there's lots of things that I'm looking forward to in the future, and I just want to make sure that I also stay present and enjoy the moment, nurture the relationships and the people that put in effort into me and that have really seen me, for who I am, and want to stop and listen and lend an ear as well. So I do really want to make sure I appreciate that.
Yeah, excellent. Well, it sounds to me like you've got your head screwed on, mate, and that you've got a few options, lots of options there of what your future might hold. And also, I think it's quite refreshing that you're not whilst you've got your passions, obviously, you're not transfixed on one thing, that you're open to all sorts of things. And I think that's probably why you'll see opportunities and you'll go in the direction that feels right.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, clearly, from what you've already done, you've got some talent in the acting space. You've got your writing and production side of things as well that you've got a penchant for. So I think with your tenacity and determination and commitment to whatever it is that you do and what you've done in the past, you'll make a success of whatever you focus on. Whether that's acting, I'm sure that will be a success for you, or whether it's renovating houses. I'm sure you'll have great success in whichever direction you're going, in every direction probably, Connor. Look, I'd like to say thank you for taking the time out again to come and talk to us on the show, to share the stories that you've shared with us and give us some insight into what it takes to make it in the acting world, which clearly from the way you were talking about it, you're very passionate about. And like you said, you could probably talk for a long time about it. I could sit here and listen to it for a long time as well. But I appreciate you sharing those stories and being quite open with us. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Steve. And like I said before, I do really, I love seeing people get excited about, what makes people tick. And I got to check out some of the work you've been doing and things. And I can only just imagine the wealth of knowledge and tips and ideas and life hacks and secrets and whatnot that you've been learning over this journey that you've been doing, and and it excites me too, seeing what makes people tick and what makes people do the things they do and chase the passions that they have. So thank you so much for having me on the show, and it was actually really refreshing to do a deep dive into some things that I haven't thought about or talked about in years.
Awesome. Thanks, mate. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
All good?
And we're out.
Thanks, mate. That was good. Enjoyed that.
Oh, mate, that was awesome. Thank you.
As you will hopefully know by now, if you've seen other episodes, this segment of the podcast is all about the wisdom worth sharing from our guests who are living a life that's a story worth retelling. At the end of every interview, I look back as part of the editing process and discover some of the gems that came out during the conversation, and I summarise them here. Well, what a pleasure it was interviewing Connor. Such a genuinely nice guy. His empathy, love for his family, and desire to be a positive influence in all that he does and with everyone he meets was obvious and flowed out throughout the whole conversation. Connor wasn't sure what he wanted to do for his career as he set out beyond his school years. He had options, and still does, which is a great position to be in. He studied for his degree, and he could have had a career in finance. And importantly, he still can if he chooses to, as he now has a qualification behind him. He was a great athlete, playing rugby and then basketball at a high level, and could have had a great sporting career. But it was his underlying passion for TV and movies that would draw him away from both of those and into the world of acting. It was whilst he was at uni that he saw an advert for an audition for short films being made by other students at uni. He applied, and not only did he get the gig, but became great friends with the guys who were behind the cameras, and they all moved in together as flatmates. I think this helped cement Connor's path into TV and film. If he hadn't have moved in with those guys, he maybe wouldn't have had so many opportunities to live and breathe it quite so much. He wouldn't have starred in so many of their short films, wouldn't have had the insight into acting that these opportunities gave him, and therefore, very possibly, would have been working in finance right now, Life's interesting, isn't it? Connor had this interest in TV and film, so much so that his bedroom walls at his parents' house were covered in movie posters, but he hadn't had the time being involved in so many sports and hadn't maybe had the drive and passion to give it a try until a chance opportunity came his way. And then he gave it a go. And I think that's why it's important for us all to give things a go. Try new stuff. Who knows what we'll discover, intentionally or accidentally. And at the very least, we'll have stimulated our brains learning something new. We might, like Connor has, find our true passion and our element. As Connor said, if you're doing what you love doing, you're going to get better at it. And then more opportunities will come your way and you'll see them. The key thing here is being willing to take a chance. Most people go through their lives never catching a break, when in actual fact, there are chances passing by them every day. We have to be open to seeing the things other than what we expect to see. We don't observe and see what else is available to us. I teach this in leadership training, but in this example, there are opportunities all around us. We first need to be open to seeing them. It's like if I asked you if you could have a new car, what would it be? And if you answered, I'd really love a red Mini. For the rest of the day, you'll see red Minis. You might now, even though I'm just the one saying it. All of a sudden, there will be lots more of them on the road than what there was before. No, that's not true. We've just told our brains that we want a red Mini, and now it's pointing them all out to us. They were going to be there anyway. We just wouldn't have observed them. The point here is that if we want new opportunities, we have to expect to see them. Then our brains will point them out. Next, we have to be willing to take action, to try new things, give it a go. It might turn out not to be what we'd expected, but at least now we know. We have still learned something valuable. When Connor was willing to take that first step and tried being in front of the camera, I bet he didn't think for 1 minute he would soon be starring alongside an international film star like Tim Roth. But that's exactly what he has done, and so much more. All because he was willing to try something new. He was willing to step off the path that he was on and find a new one. And as Connor said, if you don't go for anything, you'll never know. You've got to be in to win. Importantly, he got good advice from his parents, who advised him to finish his degree that he'd almost completed. But otherwise, his family were fully supportive of his endeavours, which is amazing and no doubt key to him achieving the success he has done so far. You can tell from the way that Connor talks about his family that they have a great relationship. He appreciates and values his family and the relationship that they have. They're so important to him that they very much are a consideration when he's making his decisions about his own life. Clearly, he doesn't want to be too far away from them for too long, unless, of course, Hollywood comes calling. What has amazed me throughout these life's work journey so far is how many of the 20-plus guests we've had have had to overcome personal struggles, bullying, stress, mental health issues and disorders, as well as physical disabilities, on their journey to creating a life that's a story worth retelling. I've thought about this quite a bit. I'd always had a suspicion that it was their struggle that caused them to work harder to overcome that, which then led to their achievement. This year, having interviewed so many amazing people, my theory on that has changed. I strongly believe that what was different about these people wasn't their struggle at all, but their belief in themselves and absolute determination that they wouldn't be boxed or labelled. Instead, they would choose to live their life their way, no matter what. Connor is no different. He was bullied at a younger age, but he said he wouldn't change a thing because that experience shaped both who he has become and his view of the world, which is why he's always open to helping others. He seems to have an amazing level of empathy and understanding of people. Maybe studying acting has helped with that, but I think he's genuinely an empathetic person. Someone who cares enough to ask questions and be prepared to hold out his hand and help. Connor also opened up about his OCD and anxiety, areas of his life he hasn't spoken much about outside of his family. So I feel honoured that he was willing to do so on this show. What was interesting was that This wasn't what he was bullied for at school, because he was able to manage it somewhat, so that people outside of his family may not have even noticed he was dealing with that. The ability to do this, gain control over it, along with recognizing that when he was in a flow state, playing basketball, for instance, the OCD subsided. It didn't go away completely, but the voice in his head telling him to do things wasn't present while he was busy and in the zone. This demonstrated to Connor that it was manageable, that he could get control of that, and it wouldn't have to control his life. He had the help of a psychologist, but Connor had to do the work, and he has done. And look at him now. If he hadn't shared that story with us, we would never have known. Like Connor said, it hasn't gone away forever, but he now knows that he can manage it, so it doesn't negatively impact his life. I want to end on a point that Connor raised during the interview, and that is that it's important to remember that the not-so-good days don't last. They're just days. Whatever we're dealing with now won't be here forever. And like Connor said, like the moon, life takes place in cycles. Wise words, indeed. It can be easy to buy into the drama of any one day, and that can become our mindset and attitude for so much longer. And when that happens, guess what also happens? We change what we expect to see. Maybe more things to be miserable about, and our brains will deliver on that. Like the red minis, we will start to see all the reasons to be miserable. We can break that cycle by believing that tomorrow is a new day, a new start, and we can decide to focus on something more positive so we get more of that. As Tony Robbins says, where focus goes, energy flows. Where will you put your focus today? Hopefully, you've been able to take many insights away from this interview that you can apply to some aspects of your life, work, and legacy. Use them, share them with others. As I always say, sharing is like teaching, and teaching helps us retain what we've learned and commit to change, which, of course, is necessary if we are to enhance our life's work. I hope that you are happy, safe, and successful in all that you do. And remember, live a life that's a story worth retelling. I'm Steve Worsley, and I look forward to seeing you next time on Life's Work, the podcast all about wisdom worth sharing.